Welcome to a world where courage meets compassion, and where dragons aren't just creatures of legend, but companions in an epic tale of bravery and love. Dive into the story of a muscular dragon tamer and a gentle scholar, brought together by destiny to save a majestic yet wounded dragon. Witness how their journey of healing transforms not just the creature, but also their hearts. This is The Tamer's Love. In the land where dragons soared and men's courage was tested, there existed a bond between humans and these magnificent creatures. The dragons, majestic and fearsome, were both allies and adversaries, depending on how they were approached. Among the tamers who dared to interact with these powerful beings, one stood out, a man whose strength rivaled the mightiest beast and whose heart remained untouched by love or fear. The man, known only as the Tamer, carried with him a legacy of bravery. Tales of his daring rescues, his battles against rogue dragons, and his ability to forge bonds with even the wildest of creatures were legendary. He moved through the mountain paths with confidence, his sharp eyes scanning for danger or opportunity. Yet, for all his strength, he was a solitary figure, his heart guarded like the treasures of a dragon's hoard. Far from the rugged mountains and the roar of dragon wings, another story quietly unfolded. In a serene library, nestled in the heart of a peaceful village, a woman sought solace in the pages of ancient tomes. The woman, a gentle scholar, spent her days immersed in the wisdom of the past, her hands caressing fragile manuscripts that spoke of times when humans and dragons lived in harmony. Her world was one of contemplation, her dreams painted in shades of curiosity and wonder, but fate is a masterful weaver, and her threads soon entwined with the tamers. It began with a distant roar, a sound that shattered the tranquility of the village and sent ripples of fear through its streets. A dragon was injured, its cries echoing through the valley as it sought refuge near the outskirts of the settlement. The villagers, though wary of dragons, knew better than to approach one in distress. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Call the tamer, only he can help." And so the man was summoned, his presence a mix of reassurance and intimidation, as he strode into the village square. Meanwhile, the woman, drawn by the commotion, stepped out of her library. She clutched a collection of scrolls close to her chest, her curiosity outweighing her caution. The sight of the dragon in pain stirred something within her, a resolve born of compassion and the knowledge she had gleaned from her studies. The man noticed her amidst the crowd, her calm demeanor standing out among the panicked faces. "You," he said, his voice firm, yet tinged with respect. "You seem to know more about dragons than the rest. Can you help?" The woman hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "I've studied their anatomy and behavior. I'll do what I can." Together, they approached the injured dragon. It lay sprawled on the ground, its massive wings torn and its golden scales marred with blood. The creature's breaths came in shallow, pained gasps, and its eyes, filled with both fear and defiance, fixed on the pair. As they drew closer, the man raised a hand, his presence calming the dragon as much as his reputation demanded. "What do you need?" he asked the woman. "Boiling water, clean cloths, and someone strong enough to hold it steady while I examine the wounds," she replied, her voice steady despite the weight of the task. The man nodded, barking orders to the villagers who had gathered at a safe distance. Within moments, the necessary supplies were brought forth, and the two set to work. The woman's hands moved with precision, her fingers tracing the dragon's injuries as she murmured soothing words. The man, using his strength and experience, held the dragon steady, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone so imposing. As they worked side by side, a quiet understanding began to form between them. She admired his courage, the way he faced danger without hesitation. He, in turn, was struck by her kindness and determination, qualities he had rarely encountered in his world of combat and survival. When the dragon finally began to relax, its labored breathing easing, the woman looked up at the man. "It's going to be okay," she said, a faint smile gracing her lips. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her longer than he intended. "Thanks to you." The sun dipped below the horizon as their work continued, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The man and the woman, strangers brought together by fate, found themselves bound not just by their shared mission, but by a connection that neither of them fully understood yet. The woman, with her knowledge of dragons, carefully examined the injured creature under the dim light of the campfire. Her fingers trembled slightly as they traced the torn membranes of the dragon's wings, but her determination overshadowed her fear. Each touch was deliberate, her scholarly knowledge guiding her every move. She recalled countless hours spent poring over ancient texts, learning about the anatomy and behavior of dragons. Now, all that knowledge was being put to the ultimate test. The man watched her with quiet admiration. Her courage in the face of such a daunting task was a rarity. He had seen many people cower or flee at the sight of an injured dragon, but here she was, unwavering and focused. He crouched beside the dragon's head, his strong hands gently stroking its snout, murmuring calming words. The creature's labored breaths began to steady under his touch. "It's scared," the woman said softly, glancing at him. "They're intelligent creatures. It knows we're trying to help." "You seem to know them well," the man replied, his voice low and steady. "More than anyone I've met." "Books can teach you a lot," she said with a faint smile. "But seeing one up close is different." She pulled out a small pouch from her satchel, containing a mixture of herbs she had prepared earlier. "This will help with the pain," she explained, sprinkling the powder over the dragon's wounds. The dragon flinched, but didn't resist. The man steadied it, his grip firm but gentle. "Hold it still," she instructed. "I need to sew the membrane before the tear worsens." The man nodded and shifted his position to brace the dragon's wing. His muscles tensed, veins standing out against his skin as he held the massive limb steady. The woman worked swiftly, threading a needle with precision and sewing the delicate tissue together. Sweat beaded on her brow as she concentrated, the flickering firelight casting shadows on her determined face. "You're good at this," the man remarked after a long silence. "Not just the stitching, but the way you approach it. You're not afraid." She paused for a moment, meeting his gaze. "I am afraid," she admitted, "but fear doesn't help. Compassion does. These creatures are more than beasts. They're beings. They feel pain, fear, and maybe even gratitude." Her words lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long while, the man felt a pang of introspection. He had always seen dragons as challenges, obstacles to be overcome, or allies to be earned through strength. But her perspective was different, gentler yet no less powerful. As the night wore on, they continued to care for the dragon together. The man gathered more firewood to keep the area warm, while the woman cleaned and dressed the wounds. They worked in quiet harmony, their actions synchronized, as if they had been a team for years rather than hours. When the dragon finally drifted into a deep, restorative sleep, the woman sat back with a sigh of relief. "It'll survive," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion and satisfaction. The man handed her a water skin. "Thanks to you," he said simply. She took a sip, her eyes meeting his. "We both did this," she replied. "You kept it calm. Without you, I couldn't have done it alone." They sat in companionable silence, the crackling of the fire and the soft sound of the dragon's breathing filling the space between them. The stars above were brilliant, their light reflected in the woman's thoughtful gaze. She wrapped her arms around her knees, her expression pensive. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like," she began, her voice quiet, "to live in a world where dragons didn't need taming, where they and humans could coexist without fear?" The man considered her words, his gaze fixed on the fire. "It's a nice thought," he said after a moment, "but the world isn't kind. It demands strength to survive. Strength and kindness aren't opposites, she countered. They can coexist just like we did tonight. He glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. You're different, he said. Most people see dragons as monsters or tools. You see them as something more. And you see them as something worth protecting, she replied. That makes you different too. Their conversation drifted to other topics as the night deepened. She told him about her life in the library, her endless curiosity about the world and its creatures. He shared stories of his adventures, his voice softening as he recounted the moments of wonder amidst the danger. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, they had forged a bond that neither had anticipated. The dragon stirred, its golden eyes opening to gaze at them with a newfound trust. The woman reached out, her hand resting gently on its scales. The man watched, a sense of quiet admiration filling his chest. We should let it rest more before it tries to fly, she said, rising to her feet. But it's healing, he nodded, standing beside her. Thanks to you, he said again, his voice carrying a weight of gratitude that went beyond words. She smiled up at him, the warmth of the sunrise reflected in her eyes. Thanks to us, she corrected. As they prepared to move on, the dragon let out a soft, almost grateful rumble. The man and the woman exchanged a glance, their connection now as undeniable as the bond they had formed with the creature. Together, they had healed more than just the dragon. They had begun to heal each other's hearts as well. As dawn broke, the tranquility surrounding the dragon's resting place was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. The man and the woman turned to see a rival tamer striding into the clearing, flanked by a group of mercenaries. His eyes gleamed with greed as they fixed on the injured dragon, now stirring under the soft light of morning. "Step aside," the rival tamer demanded, his voice cold and commanding. "That dragon will fetch a fortune in the markets. It's wasted on you." The man rose to his full height, his presence imposing as he stepped protectively in front of the dragon. "You'll have to go through me," he said, his voice low but brimming with resolve. The rival tamer sneered. "Have it your way." What followed was a clash of wills and strength. The man fought with the ferocity of someone defending more than just a creature. He was defending the bond they had forged, the trust they had earned. His movements were precise, each strike calculated to incapacitate without killing. He had no interest in unnecessary bloodshed, but he would not back down. Meanwhile, the woman, realizing the dragon was still too weak to flee, sprang into action. She reached into her satchel, pulling out a small vial of a potent herb mixture she had prepared the previous night. "This will keep it calm," she whispered to herself, carefully administering the remedy to the dragon. Her hands moved deftly, her focus unbroken despite the chaos around her. The rival tamer's mercenaries moved to flank the man, but he was undeterred. His strength and skill were unmatched, and his determination to protect the dragon fueled every blow. Even as he took hits, he stood his ground, unwavering in his resolve. The woman, having stabilized the dragon, turned her attention to the scene unfolding before her. She grabbed a sturdy branch from the ground and stepped forward, positioning herself between the mercenaries and the dragon. Her heart pounded, but she stood firm, her eyes blazing with a courage she hadn't known she possessed. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice ringing out with unexpected authority. "This dragon is under our protection. If you value your lives, leave now." The rival tamer hesitated, his confidence faltering as he took in the scene. The woman's unwavering stance, combined with the man's relentless defense, painted a picture of unity and strength he hadn't anticipated. He scowled, but signaled his men to retreat. As the mercenaries withdrew, the rival tamer cast one last look at the dragon before disappearing into the trees. The clearing fell silent once more, save for the labored breathing of the man who had sustained several injuries in the fight. The woman rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she examined his wounds. "You're hurt?" she said, her voice thick with concern. "It's nothing," he replied, though his wince betrayed the pain he was feeling. "Is the dragon safe?" She nodded, her expression softening. "Thanks to you, but you need to rest now." Together, they tended to his injuries, their movements a reflection of the care they had shown the dragon. The woman's hands were gentle yet efficient, her knowledge of herbs and remedies proving invaluable. The man, though weary, couldn't help but marvel at her resilience. As the day wore on, the dragon began to stir, its golden eyes reflecting gratitude and understanding. It stretched its wings tentatively, testing their strength, before letting out a low, harmonious rumble that seemed almost like a song of thanks. The man and the woman stood side by side, watching as the dragon took to the skies. Its powerful wings beat against the air, carrying it higher and higher until it was but a speck against the horizon. They felt a shared sense of accomplishment, a bond that had been forged through trials and triumphs. "You did it," the woman said softly, turning to the man. "You saved it." "We saved it," he corrected, his gaze meeting hers. "I couldn't have done it without you." She smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I suppose we make a good team." As they began their journey back to the village, the man reached out, his hand brushing against hers. She looked up at him, her heart skipping a beat at the tenderness in his eyes. Without a word, he intertwined his fingers with hers, their connection now as undeniable as the bond they had formed with the dragon. Together they walked hand in hand, the horizon before them filled with endless possibilities. In healing the dragon, they had found something even greater, a love as enduring and unyielding as the dragons they cherished.